Welcome back to Home Sweet Home. We're still talking with Raymond Grant about his Gladstone Drive development and, of course, from concept to completion of this project. Now, you've touched on this a little in one of your previous answers, but I've always heard about the number of approvals you have to get before starting a development. Give us a little more about that.
It's a very complicated process, but for those of us who know and understand, you may see a development as an individual from the aspect of the construction. It may be a year, maybe 2 years, but prior to getting that construction started, there is a approvals process that starts from the developer acquires, prepares his drawings, submits them to the whichever respective local authority depending on the parish that he is in. If you are a developer doing 9 units or less, then you would just submit your plans directly to the KCC and be approved from the KCC only. If you're doing 10 units or more, when you submit to the KCC, those plans are forwarded to the National Environment and Plan Agency. They're scrutinized more in terms of the process, because NEPA then in turn circulates these plans to a lot of other agencies, as much as 12 additional agencies, to assess sewage, to assess your parking, to assess your ingress egress for your cars coming in, different aspects. They go to the Mines and Geology Division to assess your rock formation. So there's a complete process that goes on for the approvals, and depending on what information you provided in your application and depending on the type of design that you have, they may require additional information, additional testing, soil tests. So a lot goes into that aspect of just that aspect of the process.
We just did the construction.
You just did the construction and think that's it. Good.
A long time coming.
And then separately and apart from that, when you actually get an approval by the local authority, you then have to assess what was approved and assess your certificate of title to see if you need to modify any of the covenants on your certificate of title. And that process is a process that goes through the Supreme Courts. And that is a minimum of 90 days by itself. When you go through that process, provided that you get approved by the courts to make changes or modifications to accommodate development, then you would go to the real estate board to get approved by the real estate board. And for us as developers, we endeavor to get approved by the real estate board because that is the time when we can actually engage purchasers and get deposits from purchasers and so on. And those deposits are protected by the act under which the real estate board operates. So in terms of that process where you have the local authorities coming up the line, essentially making sure that everything is, you know, how it is supposed to be, we come right up onto the point where we have our full set of approvals, and then we engage and get into the aspect of construction.
Based on how comprehensive that process is, it would seem that you need a lot of people, a lot of professionals here to assist with the development.
Absolutely. We start off essentially by engaging a physical planner, an urban planner, somebody who understands density, understands what we are able to get as a developer, having conducted our own market research, where sometimes we have to hire a market research firm to make that determination as to what is best for the area, what is best, what is the demand now on the market, and so on. So we have an architect that we would engage, and then we have engineers, and not just a civil engineer in terms of the design for the building, in terms of the structural integrity of the building, but we also have mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers. They're called MEPs, that do specific designs for each building, each unit, to ensure that, for example, on the electrical engineering aspect, the loads that are being generated can be handled based on the system that is designed. So, for example, our developments bring in a certain amount of standby electricity to each unit, requires us specing a larger grade standby generator as opposed to if we were just providing common area lighting. The electrical aspect of it is tied into the plumbing as well. So our plumbing engineer sets up that system for us, because we know that above 2 floors we are not getting more than 50 psi in terms of the water pressure for the units. So we have to have a specific system design that is able to provide a certain amount of water pressure for units as you go 3-4 floors up. So these professionals, in terms of the design aspect, they also work together to bring that design to life. Then separately and apart, we have to have our land surveyor that assesses in terms of our boundary surveys or topographic surveys. They set up the levels in terms of how we're going to set up the floor level for the building, because the land may not be flat. And also that surveyor does what is called a strata plan. So when the units are complete in an apartment complex, that surveyor comes in and prepares a plan to capture all those units, right? So that we can get the title splintered to generate individual titles for the new units. And that's where the attorney at law also comes in to undertake the modification process that I had mentioned earlier. So the attorney at law would undertake, of course, aspects of the acquisition of the property. And then throughout the process, in terms of the contracts with the potential purchasers, in terms of doing the strata aspect, getting the parent title splintered and so on. So we have the attorney at law engaged there. In addition to that, we also have the quantity surveyor, who is the QS, as we call him. The quantity surveyor, they assess the cost of the building in terms of blocks, sand, cement, gravel, labor materials, and all those essentials. So when the architect designs a plan, then we put that plan over to the quantity surveyor, and the quantity surveyor will say, okay, this is the cost. This is the cost to build, and it includes every nail and screw for the building. This is an example for the project that we are now of quantities for this project and what it entails. It's a huge document, and like I said, it includes all the essentials of the project. It covers every aspect from where construction is concerned. So all the costs for the project are contained in here. So this is our budget for the project. It's a process where the professionals work in stages, sometimes together, and that is an essential part, because you have to get that gel in order to get that finish. So in terms of what we have been able to achieve so far, we have a team that works on different projects on different times. So they are able now to understand, persons can engage, because when you find one issue, for example, for the plumber, at times that issue is going to affect the electrician. And the solution for the plumber may also mean that the electrician is going to have to make adjustments as well. And sometimes we have to bring our architects on site as we go through to find some solutions, because that's really the nature of construction.
Don't go anywhere. Home Sweet Home will be right back. Welcome back to Home Sweet Home. We're still talking with Raymond Grant about his Gladstone Drive development from concept to completion. And I now want to get into site prep. What does that involve?
Okay, the site prep is the aspect of the project where we take possession of the site to commence activities, but not the actual construction. So what we do in that regard is we scope the site, we decide where we're going to be setting up our site office, we decide where we're going to be setting up our work amenities, right? In terms of our power supply that we may need to upgrade to accommodate the site works, water supply as well, in terms of how much we're going to need. Is there a connection existing already? Is it sufficient to meet the demands that we're going to have on the site? In this case, luckily, there was a 4-bedroom house that had galvanized sheets in terms of the roofing. So what we were able to do was to deconstruct the house, remove the roofing, and use that roofing to create the hoarding that's necessary to create privacy and to prevent and reduce some of the nuisance to the neighbors and so on in terms of the construction with dust and noise and so on. So we were able to utilize in terms of the deconstruction, because some persons would think that you just go and you bulldoze a house down and you're gone, you know, on your merry way, but that's really not the process. So we start with deconstruction, stripping the house, getting out things that can be reused on other locations or so on. The roof, if it can be removed, remove the roof and so on. We have reused some of the burglar bars from the house on the container here. Some of the cupboards from the house we have reused. And in terms of the work amenity space, the water closets, the face basins and so on, we have reused most of those back for the workers, right? So our workers, because from time to time we have workers that come from out of town that have to sleep on site. So we ensure that they have good facilities in terms of how they operate and so on. So there's a benefit of using that process on your bottom dollar essentially. And then we set up our hoarding, simultaneously setting up our electricals. In this case, we had to set up a utility pole, relocate the meter from the house, set it up on the pole, and we actually brought in the containers that we are in now, believe it or not. And this was set up from scratch, where we got this container and we set it up to, you know, operate as our office. Because this is nice, right? Far sight. In here. Yeah. Okay, cool.